All right, 365 days of horsemanship. Well, I mean, honestly, it's day 208, 209, and 210. It's been a really, really busy week. It's been a really busy week at work. It's been a really busy week with studying. And I think I've just kind of hit the wall a little bit this week. And I also had some kind of like big personal revelations that I think are really good for my horsemanship. And like definitely today I came up and really applied them and felt really good about that. But it definitely, I think, just took me some time to really process that. And I definitely in the past I'd have really got on top of myself for, I think it's been 5 days since the last time I actually did one of these videos, and out of those 5 days I've only been up 3 times, which, you know, in the grand scheme of like how much I come up and all that stuff is like really just like not that much. But definitely every day has been a struggle to get that motivation to get here, just because I've really been so exhausted. And I think what it started with was this real feeling of just realizing how toxic is the wrong word, but how detrimental to the end result excessive pressure is. And excessive pressure can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be all three. Could be time pressure. And there's also an inherent pressure like in a power dynamic. And there's also, you know, a sense of guilt and identity and all of these things that we feel as humans. I think horses definitely feel the power dynamic aspect of pressure. And I think I just really realized, because with my horsemanship, I think is definitely helps me in my job, helps me to deal with people, helps with my people skills. And I really realized this week how many resistant behaviors I was seeing in other people, or how many situations where people were perhaps just more protective of themselves and their own needs. And when I looked back to kind of look at why this was happening and why people were feeling this way and why people were behaving this way, I realized actually how pressure that had seemed unfair to those people at the time had this negative impact, and how you ended up like how people end up feeling like the more pressure you put on them. And definitely this is like the same for me too. Like definitely I've like had this in my life before, where like sometimes the more pressure you put on me, the less easy I'm going to find it physically and mentally to back down and to come back and to say, okay, I can listen to your point of view, or I can consider this, or I can change my mindset, or I can agree to do this thing in this way. And then kind of looking back at those situations across my life, you know, personal situations, professional situations, where I have ended up becoming frustrated or becoming more resistant than was actually necessary based on the amount of pressure that I felt. And actually sometimes if you put like too much pressure on, it actually just creates this like brace. And I've seen it with Mia in a physical way very much throughout our relationship, and I think that was really what had triggered me to start this project. And with Lawrence I felt this mental pressure, but I couldn't work out how to get around it, or how to like make him not feel pressured about the things that I was pressuring him to do. And just realizing, I think this week, just how ingrained this method of dealing with other animals and humans, just interpersonal relationships generally, how much historically and culturally and socially we rely on pressure to motivate people to make their life slightly easier. And like the difference between having pressure put on you and dissociating from something that you don't enjoy in order to get back to the place where that pressure stimulus is gone is so completely different from being emotionally and physically engaged and invested and aware of what's happening around you. And the times, I think, like if I look at times in my life, like outside of the horses, because I definitely have some moments where I felt that way with the horses, but I think for clarity, you know, outside of the situations with horses in my life, I can think of times like, you know, when I'm listening to my partner talking, we're having a really interesting conversation, or when I'm playing a game with my like childhood friends that I haven't seen for many years, or where I'm when I'm having a bath and I'm just really like enjoying just being in the bath and feeling really just like luxurious in that moment. And all of these times where things were times where I was motivated to do an action because it was intrinsically fulfilling me and making me feel good. And no one else was telling me that I had to do those things. No one else's input was necessary for me to want to do those things. And I think realizing that was like a big, like poking out the bottom Jenga, and then the Jenga just falls. And I really felt like that at the start of the week. And haven't really had time because I've been working and doing these assignments. Like I just haven't really had time to really sit and chew on that very much. But I realized this, and I realized how much I was still playing this really linear game with my horses, or approaching them in a really linear way, where I would say like, I want you to do this, and because I've said I want you to do it, that's the reason. And having no other reason behind that. And actually, I'm still behaving in the same way. I can think that I'm doing something different than I was before, but I'm still doing the same thing ultimately. And what I really need to unpack is actually how to forget about those goals and be there in the moment with the horse, interacting with the horse, finding out how the horse is feeling, and along the way, those things happening as part of the horse's daily life. Because nothing that we really ask horses to do at this point in my training is outside of what they would usually do. So that's really where I feel that I need to get to. And I feel that I have been doing quite well with that, with my rhythmic breathing and just paying more attention and listening more. And it's just such a, I can't even describe it. Like, so day 208, I came up and I really was exhausted. I was after a 12-hour day shift. It had been a really long day. And I forced myself to come up and literally just came to the horses, each of them, kind of approached Mia in a few different places, counting my breaths, and then got a nice little look up from her, and she sort of touched her nose to my hand, and so I left. I went to see Lawrence, and yeah, it was the same kind of thing up there. And then day 209 I came and played a little bit with Mia, kind of along the same lines. She was actually kind of trying to have a rest because it had been raining quite a lot, and so I was able to practice some really good timing around her changing her focus and kind of use my supportive leadership to get her until there was a focus change. But I think still, you know, like, I'm trying to use these things before I've actually built them. You know, it's like, actually, I need to be in that place. I need to be doing this supportive leadership when something gets better, to stop in enough times for her to actually have that association. Like, I can't expect her to have a positive association with something that's never positive and is just always about me telling her to do something. And it's exactly the same with Lawrence. And so today I came and I came to her and I wanted to hold to her. And initially I approached her, and at some point she turned away from me. So I started stepping backwards. And then I had a nice little play with Rayo, which was really sweet. Just like some mouthy kind of nuzzling stuff, which was really cute. Managed to then like approach her from the other side, and that was really nice. But then I got dominant and started asking her to, you know, move her hind end so I could put the halter on. And she was really just like, the answer was always no to the halter. And I just realised in that moment that, like, I'm asking the wrong question at the wrong time. Like, I need to start asking questions that she can say yes to. Like, me asking her over and over and over again a question that she doesn't want to do until she gives up is not going to create a positive association. It's actually going to do the opposite. And I've been behaving this whole time like, if I'm just insistent enough, at some point she'll feel better. But that's like really unlikely to happen. Like, yeah, it will make some difference, but actually it's really slow, and it doesn't feel as good. Whereas actually what I ended up doing was I would put the pressure on her hind end and she'd look up, and then I'd ask her to yield her forequarters away from me as the next question I asked. And then I'd ask her to do a little bit of backup, and then we'd have a look around at the environment, and then I'd ask her to move her hindquarters again. And so I kept doing this, and then I'd ask for the halter and it would be a no, and then I'd have to go back and ask some more questions. But just realising that actually, like, if she says no, then I need to stop asking. Like, it's not okay for me to force a win on that game. Like, it's not helpful. Like, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I think that's something that I've experienced all my life and felt all my life is, like, you know, and like, you know, I mean, I love my mum to death. She was wonderful. You know, when my mum said no, like, she meant no. And I'm sure it's the same for many of us out there. That's, you know, how parenting has been, you know, always has been generationally for many, many years. And I think I'm realizing now that I'm applying that to my horses in a way that's not helpful to us, where it's like they're not allowed to say no. They don't have any allowance for that. And actually, they are allowed to say no. And if they say no, then that's for me to take that feedback in these situations of why they've said no and what I should be doing instead. And why they said no. Is it because I didn't ask enough other questions first? Like, what I should be doing instead? Like, is it because I asked them at the wrong time? Like, was it a fair question? You know, things like that. Like, and actually there's nothing, like, I think there's this idea that it's like my identity, you know, is that it's like somehow that's like a bad reflection on me if they won't immediately do what I want them to do. And it's just not true, you know. And like, it was the same with Lawrence today. Like, I went up and I gave him a really good itch, which was lovely. And I did manage to get the halter on Mia eventually, which was really nice. Brought her up and did her plats, which is basically our entire session. Jumped on again at the end, which was cool. And went up to see Lawrence, gave him a really good itch. And yeah, like, with Lawrence, I think it's definitely, you know, time for me to start, like, I can give him lots of what he wants now and then ask for these little things in between. And because he's highly motivated about these other things that he really wants, it's like easy for him to then the next thing he does is going to automatically be the right thing. Like, I touch my hand on him, like practicing for when we're going to yield there. And the first thing he does is turn around and look at me. I'm like, yeah, that's so great. That's exactly what I wanted. And then I go back to scratching him. And so in that way, I'm like taking advantage of a natural occurrence of him doing the behavior that I might want him to do. And, yeah, and I'm just really happy with it. I'm really happy with it now. It's been a really long week. It's been a really hard week. Mentally, I think I've made some big strides. But also I think it's been quite a lot of like deep personal reflection. I think I've still got, you know, a long way to go before I am where I want to be. But what I will say is that I'm proud of myself that I came today. I'm proud of myself that I've done this video and I'm back on it now. And I'm ready for the next week. This is my last week of placements and my last few assignments that I'm completing at the moment. And I'm just really looking forward to having them all done and being able to relax I feel like it's a whole new world in front of me, a new horizon. So I'm really ready for that. So yeah.